A very good evening to all of you, and welcome to another edition of Wealthwise with Edelweiss, our webinar series on personal finance with industry experts. Joining us today is Mr. Sumit Rai, MD and CEO of Edelweiss Tokyo Life Insurance. With over two decades with over 2 decades of experience heading business, Sumit has led and mentored large cross-functional teams on strategy and business planning and expansion. Prior to joining Edelweiss, Sumit was part of Max Life, Bank of America, and ABN AMRO Bank. Today, he joins us to share his views on the importance of insurance in protection as well as goal-based wealth accumulation and savings. Ladies and gentlemen, please note there might be a time lag of 10 to 15 seconds while we go through the slides due to network issues. Kindly bear with us. Over to you, Sumit.
Okay, I guess I'm pretty much on. So thank you, Tanya. Thank you for those very kind words in the introduction. And it's a privilege to be here today with all of you and with the customers at PWA. It's always a privilege to be here. PWA is also an esteemed partner for us, and we do end up doing a lot of good work together. So always a pleasure to be with the PWA team. Interesting times that we are living in. In my 26 years of work, have never seen a time like this, really, when things have been quite as uncertain. Things have taken such a long turn for worse, when business models and stress tests that run for business have all been thrown out of the window. Because, at the end of the day, no matter what you do, you never prepare a stress test for zero revenue or 10% revenue, 20% revenue. None of that ever really configures in our stress test. You never really figure a working environment in which people are not at work, or that people are consistently working from home for 2.5 months. So I think these 2.5 months since 24th of March have been quite interesting. They've also burst a lot of myths about what is possible and what is not possible to do. I think a lot of us lived in the perpetual belief that to do effective and productive work, you have to be in office. I think for a lot of businesses, especially for services businesses, where it has been proven that you can be quite productive, you can be quite efficient, even if you're not working from your office. You can pretty much work from anywhere today and be productive and effective. So I think a lot of myths have been kind of broken up and shattered, if I may say so, over the last couple of months. I think alongside what has also caused a lot of thinking in people's mind is about what is uncertainty. I think we've all had certain thoughts of uncertainty. Those thoughts of uncertainty have been kind of completely reimagined, if I may call them that, right? So, for example, if you were told that some 10, 12 million people will lose their jobs in this country in the space of 60 days, I don't think we'd anticipated that. For a lot of self-employed people, for example, that a business will be shut for 60 days with no recourse, I don't think many of us had kind of anticipated for that kind of uncertainty. So those are new dimensions of uncertainty, of risk, that have all got lexicon and to our imagination also, really, because like I said, at least I hadn't imagined a situation of this variety. And so therefore to that extent, I think these are very interesting times in terms of learning also. And in terms of therefore saying, what have we learned from all of this and what do we take forward as we, put together our lives after this? But before I go out towards some of those concepts and other things, I think it's important to reiterate a few things that I keep talking about. At times like these, I think one of the biggest problems that we find is misinformation. And so therefore, it is important to not get diverted by all kinds of misinformation. The WhatsApp is quite widespread. And it is important that we go to more reliable sources of information rather than believe everything that we hear. I think it's important to take all necessary precautions. especially for those of us who have elder parents or elder people in the house. I think those precautions are very important. As the government starts opening up, and many places have already opened up significantly, I think it's important that we go out and work, but it's also important that even as we go out and work, we take all necessary precautions to make sure that we are safe at all points of time. To me, I think that's a very important part of what will take place over the next couple of months. Our own safety in terms of making sure that we have all the right habits, whether it is wearing a mask, whether it is sanitization and all of that, using the sanitizer and stuff like that. I think those are important things that we must take care of those all the time. Like I said, not get led astray by various rumor mongering, because there is a lot of it. This treatment, that treatment, so on, and the others. Nobody seems to be, vaccinated against rumors, if I may say that, in today's time and age. But we must follow, we must try and establish every source of news before we kind of start believing in them. So I think that's the other thing that I wanted to talk about. But going back to what I was saying a little bit about uncertainty, I think we've all seen many different shades of uncertainty. We've seen shades of uncertainty about health. We've seen shades of uncertainty about income. We've seen shades of uncertainty about things like cash flows, right? Liquidity. All of those are things that we've never really thought about it as much. Once every few years, all of us go through some phase or the other, where one or two of these things may come into play. Uncertainty about health, for example, may come into play. Uncertainty about liquidity may come into play. But for all of these to congregate and act the way they're acting right now is, I think, for most people, certainly for me, it is a unique event that I think we're all going through. And so I think in my mind, it has thrown up certain questions, and I'm sure it has thrown up those questions for a lot of other people also. And one of the questions that I've been getting from a lot of people lately is saying, what is the relevance of insurance today? How does insurance play a role in my financial future? How can insurance help me against all of these uncertainties that I'm facing? And to that, let me say a few things, because I think those are important. First and foremost, what is insurance? Insurance is essentially a risk mitigation tool. What does it mitigate against? It mitigates against exactly what we're seeing today, the uncertainty of various events. What are these events? Ill health is an event. Death is an event. Liquidity and loss of income is an event, right? And these are all uncertain events, and insurance can help you kind of protect yourself against all of these. There's a concept that very often we talk about in the business of financial services, and that concept is of the pyramid of financial savings, right? So how do you save your money in good times and bad? And it's like a pyramid. At the bottom of the pyramid lies protection. What do you protect against? You protect against multiple things. Like I said, you protect against ill health. You protect against disability, for example, if you're not able to earn. You protect yourself against critical illnesses. You protect yourself against emergencies. You always keep some money aside for emergencies. So all of those are things that you protect yourself against, and insurance plays a key role across all of these as a very basic tool. Then the next step up in evolution was you protected yourself, and protection typically takes anywhere between 6 to 8% of a person's income or savings, rather, I might say, in terms of ensuring that all your basic risks that you're exposed to are covered for. The next step is savings and wealth accumulation. People do various things for wealth accumulation. Home ownership is a classical example of wealth accumulation and savings, but also FDs is a very popular tool with Indians. But even there, I think guaranteed income plans and endowments and others are great tools that people have used with insurance to be able to particularly move towards goal-based savings. And so a lot of the savings that we kind of end up doing are really about things like child's marriage, right? Child's education, retirement. These are all goal-based, and insurance plays a key role, I think, for most Indians, certainly, in targeting these goal-based savings and making sure that we are adequately prepared for them. The third level is beyond that. This is for those who have a little bit more surplus money. The second level again accounts for anywhere between 10 to 15% of his savings. The third level then accounts for more aggressive type of exposures, whether it is equities, whether it is mutual funds of higher risk, and so on and so forth. And finally, at the highest level, which is what you do with, let's say, the last 10-15% of your income, which is about speculation, real estate, tax shelters, and business interests, and so on and so forth, right? Also, what happens, I think a lot of people don't think about it very often, but what happens is protection, apart from individual protection, a lot of our life also depends around protecting our businesses and our incomes from future and our families from the impact of future disruption and future uncertainties, right? So, for example, if I run a business and if I am a key component of running that business and the business would serve, would be severely impacted if I was not in the position of being able to run the business, then you can also use insurance as a tool to protect your family from the vagaries of losing the business, for example, because your skills may not be available, right? What we call business insurance in our parlance. Also, for example, Married Women MWPA, Married Women Property Act, is a great tool for ensuring that your family's income is always protected, no matter what your debt may be. It is particularly a great tool for people who have a lot of debt, whose business requires them for a lot of debt, and who then provide personal guarantee to cover that debt. MWPA is a great tool for ensuring that your spouse always has recourse to some money which is legally protected from any debtors, right? So those are also all forms of protection. I've seen business families, for example, use insurance as a way of protecting the business against succession battles, right? So what they will do is use insurance to create another pool of income for various members of the family so that every member of the family can get an equitable amount of wealth from the family as the money moves from one generation to the next. So those are also forms of protection. We may think of them as superior forms of problems for some people, but those are all protection that insurance provides. So I think it's very important that we speak about, when we look at insurance, that we look at all of these various facets of coverage of uncertainties that insurance provides. Now, at this point of time, a lot of people have said, is life insurance a good cover? Is term a good cover is a question that I get asked often. And my fundamental belief is there are 4 kinds of insurance that every individual must own. Once you start earning, you must own 4 kinds of insurance. What are those 4 kinds of insurance? A, you must own life insurance, right? If you can't afford anything, go out and buy term insurance. How much term insurance should you buy? You should buy anywhere between 6 to 10 times your annual income. As your annual income keeps going up, keep adding to your term insurance coverage, right? But term insurance is a must. Everybody must have term insurance. The second thing, health insurance. Everybody should have health insurance. The cost of health coverage, treatments, etc., is escalating far more than the inflation rate in this country. And it is the one single event that devaluates a family's savings. It is the one single event that takes out all the savings of a family, right? So that is something that everybody must have. The third thing that you must have is critical illness. You know, many of us think, and I've spoken to some people who've kind of asked me the question, the pandemic is a once in a lifetime event. We won't see it again. Why should we protect yourself? Yeah, I agree. Pandemic is a once in a lifetime event. Maybe it doesn't need protection. But do you need protection against more things that are more likely to hit you? Cancer, for example, heart attack, for example. Should you buy yourself some coverage for those events? Those happen pretty frequently, and they happen to people like us. Every day we hear of somebody or the other. So I think those critical illness cover is the third important thing that most people should have. And fourthly, the one cover, the final cover that everybody should have is a personal accident cover, right? Which just means, especially for younger people, the likelihood of being in an accident is much higher than any other cause of death or impairment. So that cover, the personal accident cover, is something that all should have. There is a fifth cover that's universally prevalent. Unfortunately, in India, we don't offer it so far, which is disability. What happens to you if you lose your income because of disability? The disability insurance is also a strong tool, but not available in India, but I'm sure we will see it coming through. So these 4 or 5 basic types of insurance are things that everybody must have without any question, right? And that is where 6 to 7%, like I said earlier, between 6 to 10% of your total savings should go into creating this, what I call the moat of protection around you, making sure that you are protected against all, that your family is always protected, at least financially, against any of these things hitting you. Uh, Death is an irreversible event. Nothing can take away the fact of the loss of a loved one. Uh, but the loss of a loved one need not necessarily lead to loss of income, loss of prosperity. I don't think that is required. And insurance is a great tool to be able to cover yourself for that. I think the next thing that we should talk about is about, like I said earlier, goal-based savings. It's a large part of our ethos, our culture. You know, a lot of people that I speak to, primarily by insurance, because they see insurance as a relatively risk-free tool to be able to achieve whatever are their goals that they're gunning for, financial goals that they're gunning for. And there are 2 or 3 big goals that every Indian has, right? I think the first big goal that every Indian has is child education. We are an aspirational society, at least as far as child education goes, and all of us save for that. I have not yet seen any conversation with an Indian parent where the child's education does not figure prominently in what they're saving for. I think the other thing that we all save for is a house, right? The third thing that we all save for is what you might describe as child's wedding. And fourthly, retirement. So if you go out and talk, about 80% of all Indians will give you these 4 goals that they're saving for. And insurance is a great tool to save for each of these goals. We have, over the years created special vehicles to be able to reach out to each of these goals. People have different risk appetites, and so there, for these different kind of risk appetites, different kind of products exist. There are guaranteed products which are also tax advantageous, and those are quite popular. There are products in the ULIP genre with debt funds, which also allow you to do the same thing. So that saving piece is the second big piece that a lot of customers use insurance for, should use insurance for, as a matter of fact. The third piece is about wealth creation, which is where I think truly the unit-linked funds come up. A lot of customers even today have a myth about ULIP funds or ULIP products being expensive, but that is really far from true in today's time and age. I think ULIP products have made great progress over the last 7-8 years, and ULIP products today are in many cases cheaper than equivalent mutual funds. Also, they're good because all ULIPs require you to be logged in for 5 years, right? So you're logged in for 5 years, which allows the ULIP fund managers a greater liberty because they don't have, to be prepared for an open-ended mutual fund, like a situation where customers can redeem at any point of time. It allows them to take calls which are more longer term in nature and maybe more value accretive in nature as well as you go forward. So I think from that perspective, as well as from expense perspective, ULIPs are today a great tool for wealth accumulation for Indian people. Finally, the fourth thing that I spoke about, a more advanced use of ULIP tools or insurance tools, which is, let's say, let's just talk about a few things, like for example, Keyman. So, or partnership insurance. So if you have 2 or 3 people in a business who are essentially the people who are running the business, without whom the business may fail to survive, then how do you protect your business against the loss of such people? And that is where Keyman Insurance comes in, where you can actually create an asset. Like I said, you cannot replace the person. What you can do is make sure that you can protect the stream of income that the business would lose because of the loss of such a person. How do you do that? You go out, you buy a life insurance cover under a Keyman scheme. You get some tax advantages when you do that, both at the times of paying your premium and also at the time of when you get the claim. You get advantages on both sides. And those are great tools for businesses from a business continuity perspective, or certainly even if the business may not continue, income continuity perspective. Similarly, like I said earlier, if you are a person whose nature of business involves taking a lot of loans, then having a stream of money available to your family through the Married Women Property Act is also a great tool that a lot of people use. These are more specialized tools. Not all of us are fully aware of them, but the more aware people are certainly using a lot of these. So Married Women Property Act, business insurance or Keyman insurance as a tool for protecting the income of the business and so on is the other big advantage. Net, what I would like to say is that there are a lot of myths about insurance. There are myths around its suitability. I hear a lot of people tell me I don't need insurance. I believe everybody needs insurance. Fundamentally, I don't think there is anybody who doesn't need insurance. The amount of insurance that you need may differ. Using a good advisory firm or a good advisor or an agent is a good way of understanding how much insurance you need, what is the right amount of insurance that you need. It is also a good way of ensuring that your family is always protected from the vagaries of fate, if I may call it that. So those were some thoughts that I had. At times like this, when suddenly some of our worst fears that we don't like to think about, suddenly become real in front of our eyes, I think we are forced to confront the realities of what can happen to us. It's a good time to be able to think about that. It's a good time to reassess your own position. It's a good time to say, is my family well positioned to be able to live a good life, irrespective of whether I am or I'm not around? And insurance is the one tool, unlike almost any other financial tool, which makes sure that your goals, the dreams that you have for your family, are always met, whether you're around or whether you're not around. It's the harsh reality of life. Everybody goes away at some point of time. But to prevent your family from disintegrating or living a bad life in case you're not around is, I think, one of our prime responsibilities as people who value our families. And I think COVID, the other role it has played is that it has forced all of us to think a lot more about our families. And I think it's a good time to sit back and reevaluate. Have you provided enough for your family? Have you created the right financial assets for your family? Have you ensured that your family will never struggle in your absence? I think those are the big thoughts that, if I may say, I wanted to kind of leave with all the people who are on this cast. So, Tanya, happy to answer any questions if you have. Would be more than happy.
Thank you, Sumit. That was indeed very insightful. I will now open the floor for question and answers. In fact, we have a lot of questions already piled up. I will start with this first question. So yeah, this is a very interesting question I have. There's some family person wants to know. He has a family of 4. How do you think he should structure his insurance needs?
Okay. So while I would actually recommend that he or she should talk to a good financial advisor who can look at or insurance advisor who can look at his or her needs more closely and suggest a more structured approach. But I can certainly give you a few thumb rules. First and foremost, you should have term insurance, right? How much term insurance do you need? There are 2 ways of looking at it. One way of looking at it is I should have term insurance, which is anywhere between 6 to 8 to 10 times my annual income. So if I earn, for example, 10 lakh rupees per annum, then I need term insurance, which is around 80 odd lakhs. At the top end, maybe 1.1, 1.2 crores. Now, what am I trying to do? Therefore, I'm creating a pool of money that can take care of my family for the next 10 years, 12 years. Also, when this pool of money, if invested wisely, can throw up a further stream of income, which also allows the family to be well taken care of. So I think that's term. The second thing that, like I said, you want to think about then, once you've kind of done this, and the other part, like I said, in protection, 2 or 3 things that you should look at, because when all put together, they're very powerful. Personal accident insurance, health insurance is very, very necessary. Like I said, health, health issues can strike us at any point of time. And so therefore one needs to, and health is the one thing, the cost of an expensive treatment does more to impact a person's financial stability than almost anything else, right? So I think that's something that you need to protect for. Like I said, between all of these, you have to think, for example, if you were to go for any kind of treatment today that calls for you to be in a hospital for 4, 5, 6 days, then you are talking an expense of anywhere between 2 to 5 lakhs, depending on what your illness is, right? So you have to have that kind of cover for yourself and for your family, come what may. Health today has interesting options around floaters, and so one cover can cover your entire family and can be cost economical as well. So that is the other thing that you should look at. Certainly, personal accident I spoke about is the third thing that you should look at, especially if you're relatively younger, because that the unfortunate fact in India is that more than 2 lakh people die in road accidents every year. That's a simple statistic, right? Which means that you're talking about 1.5% of this country's population dying out of road accidents every year. It's unfortunate, but it is true, and you have to protect yourself for it. The second thing that you then have to think about is, what are the things that you want to save for during your lifetime? How much do you want your child to study in India or go abroad? If you want your child to study abroad, what kind of money does it need today? What kind of inflation are we talking about? Therefore, what kind of money are we going to need? How much do I need to pay in order to have that money available to me then? So, like I said, child education, marriage, retirement are the 3 big goals that all of us save for. Retirement in particular is something that I think, as Indians, we've long held the belief that our children will support us in retirement. It's a good belief, children do support, but is that what you should leave your retirement to by itself? Is, I think, inadequate. A lot of people think your PF, if you're working, your PF and other things will take care. Unfortunately, they don't. They're not adequate. So you have to supplement your savings. And the fact is, today you live almost as long after work as much as you worked. So for example, you start working at 22, 23, 24, you will work till about 58. So you work for about 30, 35 years, right? You will live for at least 20, 25 years, most likely. Average longevity in India is around 70, 72 now. So you will live for a fairly long point of time, and have you saved enough is something that you should think about. So those, and therefore, how much would you need? How much inflation should you factor in? Where should you invest? All of those are questions that I would genuinely advise you to talk to a good insurance advisor. You can go to the company's websites and you'll find you can go to ET Live website, for example, and find some very good calculators that can tell you how much do you need for various eventualities in your life. Or you can reach out to us and we'll be happy to help you.
Thank you so much, Sumit. I have another question which is very much based on today's scenario. There is somebody who wants to know that while people are adapting so quickly with the environment, right now there's an increased uncertainty and people are looking at insurance category. But once we reach normalcy, do you see people again proactively buying life insurance?
It's a very interesting question, Tanya. It's a question that very often I think about. I think we've reached some kind of a tipping point with this whole episode. During the course of our lifetime, at least we've not seen a health scare of this variety. So many people dying out of a single illness and everything. With time, over time, I think some of these impacts will dissipate. But I think this episode the whole COVID-19 episode, I think, has left an indelible impression in people's mind. So here is how I see it. What was very evident, even without COVID-19, was that the understanding of protection as a risk management tool was increasing. And a lot of people, for example, are increasingly going and buying online in a do-it-yourself mode, right? I suspect that this will help accelerate that trend. And I also suspect that a lot more people will join on that trend. India has a very large Gen Z, as they call it, which is now coming into the workforce. This is a generation that I think is a little bit more educated about financial realities than some of the previous generations. So will it continue to grow? Yes, it will. It is quite possible that, as with most things in life, with time, memory fades, and with memory, the impact fades. Maybe that will happen, but I don't see it happening pretty quickly. I see the impacts lasting for some time at least.
Tanya?
I have a feeling that we've lost Tanya. Or
Sorry,
Tanya speaking.
I was on mute.
Yeah.
Sorry, apologies. So there's a gentleman who wants to know that he's already insured but wishes to switch to another health insurance company. The first question is if he can switch, and the second part to this is will he still avail the benefits for which he's already paid 4 years of premium with the current insurer?
Very interesting question and a very good question. I think there are two things that you should be absolutely sure about. There is a concept of portability that exists in health insurance, which means that you can port your benefits from one insurer to the other. But not all products offer it. So first and foremost, when you want to do this, you first have to see whether your insurance policy is currently portable or not. If it is, then find out all the processes that will be required for you to be able to complete this transaction. If it is not, then as you buy the new one, you have to be very sure that every time you buy a new policy, there are exclusions in place for certain time durations, which will impact your coverages, right? And you have to then make sure that these exclusions are fully covered for, or that you are reasonably certain that you will be able to get away with them. Typically, an exclusion could last from 2 to 4 years. Your old policy, if it is 4 years old, would have outlasted all of these exclusions. So therefore, you have to very astutely judge whether some of the risks that are provided by those exclusions, are you going to be liable to some of those risks? In that case, it may not be appropriate for you to switch, or in turn negotiate with the insurer to be able to get some of those exclusions out, but that is unlikely. It can happen sometimes in group kind of scenarios, but individual basis slightly unlikely. If not, it might serve a purpose to kind of stay with the current insurer, even if, you know, and maybe buy some supplementary lesser cover from the other insurer if you're looking for certain kind of features. Once again, if I had more details, I would have been able to help more. But in general, I would first study portability, the impact of portability, and what are the exclusions and how likely are you to be impacted by those exclusions are the three things that you should keep in mind.
Wonderful. We have another question which is more to do with our global state. Several countries like Australia, Switzerland, and many more have universal healthcare or social health insurance schemes. Do you foresee India also making such progressive steps towards social security?
That is indeed a very, very interesting question, Tanya. It's both a philosophical question as well as a question about economics. I do believe that over the last 10 years, we have made actually sizable progress towards a system which somewhat is akin to a universal health system. So, for example, the Ayushman Bharat scheme is something which is akin to that. Having said that, I also believe that in a country which is quite as large as ours, and where tax coverage and tax returns as a proportion of total revenues are still small, I think we will always be more akin to a Canadian system where there is some basic sort of universal health scheme available, but you top it up with health insurance. I think we might end up in a system like that, but even that is going to take time because, like I said, uh, we are a large country and it is healthcare is becoming more and more expensive. So I think that those challenges will be there. But I think the government is thinking about it for sure. There is no doubt in my mind that the government is thinking about it and steps are being taken. Progressive steps have been taken over the last 10 years. So Ayushman Bharat, like I said, is a big step. And I think Ayushman Bharat should eventually evolve into a more basic kind of a universal health scheme is how I see it happening.
Thank you, Sumit. We all have those positive feeling in mind that definitely we will also reach there someday. With that, I have another question for you. It says that pandemic has accelerated opportunities for digital. What kind of impact do you see on insurance advisory and how is the ecosystem likely to change?
Yeah. Again, very interesting and very insightful actually. Uh, when today we talk about digital, very often digital is consumed, is confused also with do it yourself, go on the net, buy it yourself. But digital today, and especially with the pandemic having set upon us, is redefining the business in many different ways. So while obviously there is a surge, and we can see that surge in terms of do it yourself over the last 2 months, what has also happened is that the use of digital platforms as a tool for face-to-face insurance has long been a business that has been, thought of as a business which is as a product which is sold, not bought. One, I think it's a misconception, but it is there. B, the belief has been insurance is best understood face-to-face. And so insurance to that extent, the face-to-face sales process for a fairly long point of time, for a fairly long duration of time, has pretty much stayed where it is with some bits of improvisation. Now, over the last 2 months, what we've seen and what I think will become more and more prevalent over a period of time is that I think things like digital platforms like Zoom, for example, or Teams, or there's so many of them, WhatsApp video, people have suddenly taken to them in a large way. And while they may still not continue as popular as they were in these last 2-3 months. I think the trend of things like Zoom parties and all that you've seen, I don't think that's going away completely. It might reduce a little bit, but for people who are far apart, they will continue to use Zoom. And so therefore, a whole generation of people, and I include myself with them, who never used tools like Zoom or Teams before the pandemic struck, are today extremely confident about being able to use those tools. What we are also seeing is the use of these tools in doing things like financial advisory now. I think that is, and so therefore, your ability to do face-to-face while sitting remotely will increase. Your ability to therefore be able to standardize the sales process digitally and make sure that the advice that you get is a lot more structured, a lot more uniform, a lot more suited for you, customized for you, personalized for you, will become much bigger. So I think the digitization will lead to a big trend towards personalization and more customization towards an individual by doing two things. A, being able to see a lot of your discussions online and being able to customize to them. But also, as we put in more of this data, I think we understand consumers more. As we're able to understand consumers more, we can create more product options for people, which are suited to more narrow requirements, if I may call them that. So I think, yes, digitization, again, thanks to COVID-19, is at a tipping point and will lead to maybe 2, 3, 4 years out. What we will see as a sales process is something that we've spoken about for a fairly long time, both in retail as well as in financial services, but it hasn't worked quite as well, which is called omni-channel, and which basically means that, as a customer, you could go to my website, you could do some bit of research there, and then you could leave, and then you could reach out to somebody a physical advisor that who works with Edelweiss took your life and who is able to see exactly what is it that you were researching on the website, how can we structure it for you. You can go back, fill the form yourself, or you can ask the distributor to fill it for you, so on and so forth. So I think omni-channel will become a reality. It was something that has been spoken about for a while, but now I think the time for omni-channel has come for creating a seamless path for consumers to be able to buy and service their insurance policies uh, across multiple platforms, but with a uniform experience.
Thank you, Sumit. I have a very, very interesting question here. There's a person who is 57 years old in a private job, not planned his retirement. How can he do it now? He has a saving of 30 lakhs.
Okay. I'm assuming that your retirement is at least about 3 years away. I'm not sure what your liabilities are, but there are 2 or 3 things that you can do. A, as and when you retire, your savings of 30 lakhs should be broken up into 2 pieces. One could go into purchasing annuities because that will provide you a stable income. The other could go into products like deposits and others so that they can continue to grow a little bit. It is a little difficult, and let me be candid. It is a little difficult to start planning for retirement at 57. You just don't have enough time. The power of compounding is very important, and therefore retirement is best planned for when you have 20-25 years rather than when you have 10 years or 5 years of or less. Having said that, like I said, at your level, it might be appropriate to look at this 30 lakhs and saying what part of it can be put into annuity and how can you put it into annuities. Typically guarantee you a certain income for life. So you want that guaranteed income for you to come through for life. Secondly, you then look at some other parts to say, can they give me a slightly more, a higher return than annuities? And which you can keep shifting with various goals in your life. You can keep shifting from annuity from other savings into annuity as you need more income as a supplement. I think the other thing that you need to think about, quite honestly, is what are your expense levels today? Typically, post-retirements, expense levels do tend to come down because some of the things that we spend money on while we are actively working, like transportation and others, do tend to come down. So what is the money that you will require post-retirement on a monthly basis? What kind of annuity do you need to purchase and what else will you need to do is something that you could try and do yourself through some of the tools that are available on various websites, but B, you could also talk to a good experienced advisor and he or she can help you. Tanay, one of the things that you will notice is that keep talking about the value of advice. I think to me, it's very clear that for most of us, we just don't understand financial products enough. We all need the advice of a good of somebody who understands financial products and has our interest at heart. And that is something that I will encourage everybody. Very often people feel advisors tend to be into product selling and into making their own money. You have to find the right kind of advisor. PWA, for example, I know has a very structured process of how to go about advising clients. And so therefore, having the right kind of advisor is very important for all of us.
Thank you so much, Sumit, for those kind words for PWA. I have another question for you, which says that should we consider insurance as an investment or risk coverage? This gentleman has about 15 LIC policies.
Okay, to me, it is both. It is actually insurance is 3 things. Okay, first, like I said, is protection. How much money does your family need is the insurance that you must buy. Second is savings. Relatively risk-free products like endowments and others, which are goal-based and oriented towards achieving a certain financial goal in your life. And thirdly, wealth enhancement options like ULIPs, which are more risky. One of the things that I see very often with consumers, most consumers believe that in insurance, your principal is never at stake, right? It is basically guaranteed kind of a product where at least your principal is always safe. ULIPs don't always fall in that category, but ULIPs also have the potential to give you a higher upside than the guaranteed products or the endowments and so on. So you can buy insurance with all three goals in mind. Insurance can provide you coverage across all three, but like I said, you have to be clear that you're meeting all your requirements. So with your 15 policies, how much life cover do you have? And is that cover adequate to take care of your family is the first thing that you should answer. If it is not, then maybe you need to go out and buy a 16 policy, which is a term policy, which adds to that cover that you have. And then subsequently see about when these policies are maturing, what kind of return will they give you, and do they meet your life goals at this point of time, and how do you realign those is the other thing that you should think about.
Wonderful. With this, Sumit, we have the very last question for you. We would want to know more about the Tokyo Life. We've heard that it's a very big player in Japan. We would want to know some of the good practices and have we implemented them here?
Okay. I know this is an interesting one. This is not something that I'd anticipated. All right. So Tokyo Marine, as you so rightly pointed out, Tanya, is a very large company. Tokyo Marine is actually almost a 150-year-old company, principally a Japanese company, as is evident from the name itself, and started out essentially first as a general insurance company. It is today one of the oldest and largest insurance companies in the world. It figures in the list of Fortune 50. By size of the business across all businesses put together. So it's one of the top 50 businesses in the world. So Tokyo Marine has been in the business for a very long time. It's present across more than 40 countries in the world today, including most of the first world, whether it's Europe, whether it's US, Canada, and so on. It also has now a sizable presence in the rest of Asia, outside of Japan as well. In terms of their business practices, I think there are the biggest thing that Tokyo Marine has taught us is risk management. Insurance at the end of the day is a risk management game. Okay, our core purpose in life is to take on the risk of other people's lives and be able to manage that in such a way that we are able to fulfill our promises to all our customers. And in that, I think Tokyo Marine has a huge history and huge expertise, which has been extremely beneficial to us. I think the other thing where we've learned a lot from them is in what I referred to earlier as customization and individualization of solutions for people. They do a phenomenal job at it. We are still learning from them. We are still getting better at it. But I think the ability to figure out what an individual requires and then be able to customize a solution to meet that requirement is something that Tokyo Marine does exceptionally well. And that is something that we're still learning, kind of learning from them. The third thing that they're now investing a lot in and which we hope to learn from them is around the use of digitization of processes and products in order to be able to provide a very seamless experience to customers. And that is something that we are currently trying to understand a little bit more of and trying to make sure that we can bring those advantages to India as well. Tanya, you're on mute. I can't hear you.
Yeah, thank you, Sumit. There's some connectivity issue. My apologies. Thank you, Sumit. It was an immense pleasure to have you on board, and I'm sure your thoughts and insights on how to create wealth through insurance within current market landscape was extremely useful. I'm sure the audience found your expertise of significant value. Do you have anything that you would want to say before we close this entire webinar?
First of all, let me thank you guys for having me over. Indeed, an honor for me to be here with you. It's always a pleasure to be able to interact with the customers of the broking business. I have always found very interesting insights as well as questions coming from the customers of the broking side of the business, and therefore it's a platform that I always look forward to coming on and interacting. So thank you so much for having me. Hopefully this session has been fruitful for all the people who were there in this session. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, more than happy, will be able to kind of answer any questions that they may have on an individual basis also. Always happy.
So like I said, Sumit, it was an honor to have you here. And to our audience, thank you so much for tuning in. We look forward to having you to our future webinars. Till then, stay home, stay safe.